Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, thank you for coming on. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, this is going to be awesome. I'm excited.
Yes,
Yeah.
it really is. I'll get into your bio and things in just a moment, but we have some history, and it's actually interesting. It's been 20 years or so, and you come in and we're like, we haven't aged a day. It's all the longevity stuff that we're involved with, right? I'm sure if we looked at pictures from 20 years ago, we would look exactly the same.
I mean, it's amazing. I think it was like 2002 or something like that. Yeah, 2002. Yeah. So it's been a bit, and yeah, you and your wife are the same.
Yeah. Until we do look at pictures, then we're like, well, I think we're doing pretty well. But it's really, really good to see you again, and I'm looking forward to getting into what your journey has been to kind of open this whole thing up. I'll read your bio, and then we're gonna go from there. This is not going to be on the clinical side of things too much. Of course, we're definitely interested in what you're doing and how you're doing it and the different ways in which you're doing things differently, which is super cool. But this is going to be primarily on the business front of things. And we aim to help other clinicians and others that are in private practice or those that are thinking about going into private practice be able to, understand what lessons that you've learned along the way. And if they're struggling in certain areas, what your thoughts are on those things. So it's a kind of a deep dive into the business, the way we call it, the business of medicine podcast, but so that everybody understands where you're coming from and what you're about. Dr. Michael Karlfeldt is an ND and a PhD. Is a naturopathic doctor, entrepreneur, and founder of the Karlfeldt Center in Boise, Idaho, leading integrative medicine clinic specializing in complex chronic illnesses, cancer care, and regenerative therapies. With nearly 4 decades of clinical experience, Dr. Karlfeldt has built a multimodality practice that blends cutting-edge medical technologies with holistic, patient-centered care. As a business leader in healthcare, he has scaled this clinic to a multi-million-dollar operation by integrating innovative treatment models, advanced diagnostics, and high-touch patient experiences while navigating the challenges of growth, staffing, and profitability in a very rapidly evolving medical landscape. Dr. Karlfeldt is also the host of the internationally recognized podcast Integrative Cancer Solutions, a former TV and radio host, Cancer Breakthrough Summit host, and the best-selling author of A Better Way to Treat Cancer and co-author of Breast Cancer Breakthroughs. He is passionate about redefining the future of medicine by creating scalable care models that address root causes, improve outcomes, and empower both patients and practitioners. This part I love because it just shows the level of preparedness you had for today. On today's podcast, we bring a unique perspective on what it really takes to build, grow, and sustain a successful medical practice without losing sight of purpose, innovation, and patient impact. So thank you for putting that last sentence on there for me, because generally that's something that I would have to do. But I read through your bio, and of course I know how impressive it is, but that last section, I'm like, wow, he's as busy as the guy is and as many different things he's got going on. I appreciate that last little piece that you put on there. That really just shows that you're coming in at the right frame of mind of what the intention of the podcast really is.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the integrative, the holistic, the natural, functional medicine model is something that people are really looking for, and to be able to deliver that model in a very effective way to the patient population, I think is going to be key. Just seeing that momentum building, especially after COVID, a lot of people lost trust in the medical community, which is both good and bad. But with that, then there's a recognition of the great need that was not being fulfilled by the medical profession. And that is then looking for more safer, restorative, regenerative tools that does not cause harm, but support the body's own healing mechanism.
Yeah, I think COVID really highlighted the necessity of being proactive in our care. There was a number of different takeaways through COVID, but it seems like that one is a lesson that most people walked away with, right? Which is we've got to take our health into our own hands. And the traditional Western medicine side of things is not really set up for helping people until after they're sick and after, the problems have already started to root in, and now, the recovery it's much more problematic. So I definitely want to get into those things, but I want to start with little Michael and understand a little bit more about your upbringing, because you were actually introduced into naturopathic medicine at a very young age. And so kind of starting back to your earlier days in Switzerland, where it's you and your mom.
Sweden, actually.
Sweden.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's common. Most
Are they,
people.
how close are they to each other?
It's about a day and a half drive.
So we're not.
Yeah,
close.
you're in the
Okay,
ballpark.
Sweden. It's funny because when I read through it, when I was reading, doing my research, I was like, I clearly was saying, don't say Switzerland. Like, it's not Switzerland, it's Sweden. So I managed to not get that correct.
It's kind of like Idaho and Iowa. It's a
right. It's probably another day and a half drive from one to the other. So Sweden, you and your mom, your dad's out of the picture. You're 13 years old, and so let's just start at that point, because this was really where the whole journey began for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was actually, I'm sorry, it was in Switzerland that took place, even though I'm from Sweden. So you're half correct.
So at this point, I'm 1/3 correct.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we it was at a bed and breakfast in Switzerland, and it was a little town called Zollikofen outside of Bern, which is capital of Switzerland. And so my mom and I were at this bed and breakfast, and then this other couple was there as well, also from Sweden. And he was a leading naturopathic doctor, and I was 13 years old and didn't really have a father figure. I didn't know my father very well. I visited him maybe, less than probably as many fingers as I have on my hands. That's as many times that I spent with him, through my upbringing. And so this gentleman, we connected very well with him, and he kind of took me over almost. That became like a father figure. So we would go and visit. My mom and I would visit, his family in the northern part of Sweden. And then as I get a little bit older, I was very intrigued by mathematics and physics. And so I was wanting to become a particle physicist and go to Stanford. That was like my dream. And I was studying to become an engineer so I could move in that direction. And and he just kind of said, hey, why don't you come and check out my practice and see what you think? And I did, and I really fell in love with the connection with people, the impact that he had on people on their journey. And so I was kind of thinking, either I can go in this one direction where I sit in a lab and then kind of count electrons, and that would be very fascinating to interact with people, and also the complexity of the human body, really fascinated me. So so I decided then later on then to start to study with him and pursue that direction.
So you're 13 when this interaction originally happened, and then. So what was the experience after you met, and then at what point did you start making a decision to go away from the physicist route to the medical route?
It would have been actually around 19.
Okay.
So 19 is where I decided that this is the direction I want to go.
Okay.
And he'd actually moved here to United States earlier. And so I when I was 19, then I thought, I'll move to United States. I'll study with him, be in his practice, work with his patients, and that's kind of the next step in that evolution.
So you ended up in the United States because of this doctor following him as a preceptorship. That was at 19 years old.
19, yeah.
If he had done something else because of the missing father figure, this guy professionally was in, somewhat, I guess, the same realm, but really not too much, in science. But if he had done something different, let's say he was a mechanical engineer or worked on space shuttles, or do you think that you would have gone down that path?
I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure. If it would have been close enough to what I was already passionate about, I probably would have pursued my direction. Yeah, that's it. It's kind of like the movie Sliding Doors. You don't know.
Yeah. It's just interesting because of how impactful these intersections that we have in life, and how it can change things, and how this unexpected bed and breakfast interaction really altered the course. You wanted to go to Stanford, and you were committed to that, and ended up leaving your country coming here and then you did that for 7 years, 6, 7 years. You worked with him?
Yes. I studied with him for about 7 years.
Okay.
And then I opened up my own practice, 7 years later.
Okay.
And that was here in the United States.
And where at?
That was actually in California.
Okay.
So,
okay.
yeah.
And what are you doing when you're working alongside him? Have you finished college at that point? Do you have a degree?
Yeah. So what happened is that I almost did 2 years of engineering then in Sweden prior to leaving. And then I studied with him then for 7 years. The issue with naturopathic medicine was that at that time, it wasn't really a good university for naturopathic medicine. So it was more set up in that you studied with somebody and it's almost like a trade school in a way. And so I started with that training with him and then later on then did additional schooling while also seeing patients, to be able to gain, my degrees.
And what are your degrees in?
I'm a naturopathic doctor and then have a PhD in natural healing.
In natural healing.
Yeah.
Anything on the Eastern side of medicine? Did you ever do any type of training or education on like Eastern medicine, India or?
Yeah, so it becomes part of the naturopathic medicine, learning Chinese medicine, acupuncture, Ayurvedic medicine. So that way you have a full breadth because essentially naturopathic medicine is just using nature to address issues, health issues. So whether that's Chinese, whether that is, breathing techniques, fasting, hot and cold, whatever that may be, all of it is then designed to support the body's own healing mechanism.
So so all you've known is naturopathic. I mean, from the very beginning, that was, and what year was that?
I was back in 87.
87. I mean, that was, and so naturopathic medicine certainly wasn't mainstream. And so was this doctor that you trained under, was he one of, what do you call him, like one of the founding docs?
I mean, he was essentially a trailblazer in Sweden, and he got his training in Germany, because there's really nothing in Sweden where you could, learn, naturopathic medicine.
Yeah. So
it's just one of those that where you had to, find somebody to kind of guide you and train you. And then it's the same when I came in LA or had my practice in Santa Monica. There, a lot of people had awareness, but it was still a huge educational process, to educate the public about what naturopathic medicine is. And the same when I moved here to Boise, Idaho, back in 2001, it was just a tremendous amount of education to the public so that they can understand, the value, what it is and the value of that type of medicine.
Yeah. What is your take on like ivermectin, microdosing, a lot of these plant-based medicines that are out there that Joe Rogan, is pushing for and says good things about? I know a lot of people who have done ivermectin and ayahuasca and have had incredible experiences. What's your position on those things?
I mean, I think all medicine is beneficial in the right time and the right dose, for the right individual. We use ivermectin a lot, obviously during COVID, that was very helpful for a lot of patients. And we use it now quite a bit for people battling cancer. So,
oh, wait, I did not mean ivermectin. To put ivermectin and ayahuasca in the same category. What's the other one?
It's psilocybin.
Psilocybin.
Yeah.
Ivermectin. Yeah. So we'll shelf ivermectin because that was not when I was concerned.
We'll bring ivermectin and fembendazole in later on.
We'll bring that in later. That one's way less. Well, I guess it is somewhat controversial because of what happened in COVID, but for stupid reasons that are government related more than anything, I think. But more the plant based. So psilocybin, ayahuasca. Is psilocybin mushrooms one and the same?
So psilocybin is from the mushroom, magic mushroom. Ayahuasca is a different type of species. Both of them bring a huge amount of value. Like for instance, a friend that I met, this was probably about 15 years ago. He dealt with a liver cancer and he had there was like no treatment that was going to fix it, about to die. So, turn of events, he connected with a shaman that in Peru, actually, that did ayahuasca, and he did that journey. He obviously you go through a lot, while you go through the journey. But he got rid of his liver cancer. And I mean, his mental shift, and then that's probably the most powerful with both of those tools is the shift in your outlook. It's kind of like that shaking of the snow globe, a little bit. Your priorities become different. Things that you thought were extremely important, all of a sudden you realize in the big picture of things, it's not that important. And so you're essentially resetting your whole kind of the brain and immune system and endocrine system. That whole communication is shifting towards something that's more at peace, more in that theta state, that where you're more relaxed, parasympathetic state.
Yeah. You ever done it?
I haven't done ayahuasca. I have done, psilocybin, and it's been a long time ago. But I remember the experience I had was quite phenomenal. It was really had a strong impact on me for the rest of my life.
Are you interested at all in ayahuasca?
I want to make sure that if it's done, that it is done in the right setting and that I have the right intention. That's always the challenge when you step into that. It's such a powerful tool. It's kind of like you step into a race car and you got to make sure that you have the car pointed in the right direction. If it's just a little bit off, then it can take you in places that you maybe did not expect and was not productive.
Yeah. The ones that I know that have done it, mainly veterans and those that have experienced some, real traumatic type of events. And so they went into it knowing that they had to deal with some shit, right? And they had to work through it, and what they were doing wasn't working. And so I think that's obviously very important. I do know one person that went through it and did not have a good experience, and they actually tried resisting it. They tried to fight it. And so again, like the intention is critically important. From what I understand, I'm super interested in it. I definitely see myself trying it and doing it, and think I would really benefit from it.
It's a powerful tool, and and you have for people that do that microdosing, where you just do it a little bit, each day, or maybe do a little bit for a few days per every week, and it just helps to kind of create new brain pathways. So they see that it improves neuroplasticity and also opens up the brain to move in directions that it was not used to. And so especially when you deal with PTSD or anxiety, traumas from the past, and that becomes really important because you're so stuck in a mental pattern, and you need something to help you to kind of move away from that. And it's really powerful medicine. I have a good friend, Dr. Maya Shetreat. She wrote a couple of books on the plant medicine. So she's one that's kind of been educating me a little bit and guiding me. So it's really, really cool medicine.
Well, that's awesome. Well, if you ever decide to host a retreat, you find yourself going down that path or something, make sure to let me know. I'd love to do it. A friend of mine just got back from Peru a few months ago, and he's working through right now the whole other side of it. And, that's really where the real work happens. But man, he just says, I mean, he's looking forward to going back. Like everybody that I know have done it has just loved it. But not to get off track, because this is the Business of Medicine podcast, but I just am super interested in that side of it. And always, especially those that have spent few decades in that space and understanding plant-based medicine and naturopathic stuff, your perspective and opinion, it matters.
And that's the thing. I mean, you're looking at, vets, you have all the anti-anxiety medication, antidepressant medication, and even though they're helpful, studies show that they're just a little bit more helpful than placebo. So, we need then to find other tools, to direct people towards that have long-lasting effect and where they're not dependent on a pharmaceutical, but that they can become self-reliable and become empowered themselves.
What's slightly more powerful than a placebo?
SSRI.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what's your overall take? I mean, I think I can assume pretty reasonably what you'll say, but the whole R system, where it is, like we're talking about, you have some devices from BTL in your practice, and one of them, the ExoMind, requires the patient goes through SSRI a couple times. And this is if they're going to go down the insurance path, which you're not, your private practice or private pay. But all these obstacles that the insurance companies or that our healthcare system makes people go through, which, is problematic, obviously, for the patient. It's also problematic for the practices as well. And so you from the very beginning, when you opened up your first clinic, what year was that?
So at 94.
1994. Geez. And have you been private paid the entire time? Have you ever gone down the path, never gone down the path of insurance?
No. I mean, there are patients have submitted. Insurance have never guided my care in any way.
That's incredible. Especially because of how new, well, I guess maybe that makes sense because of how misunderstood and new naturopathic medicine was, that getting insurance to probably play ball with it way back then, let alone, I mean, even today there's challenges with it. So I can imagine it would be impossible to have a practice that was insurance based with.
And that's one of the challenges, for people out there. I mean, yes, when you want to start your practice, it is very tempting to kind of make sure that whatever you're doing is covered by insurance.
Yeah.
But it becomes such a game that you're playing. And so it eats up a lot of your resources. And then the insurance, may or may not pay. You have a delay pay, and you may only get a certain percentage of the services that you offered that you get paid for. So you really lose control of your practice. It doesn't mean that that model is not good, but you really have and need to understand the pros and the cons and the impact that it has.
Yeah, for sure. I got involved with a primary care last year, and insurance based, and I learned all of those types of lessons, right? Where, how long it takes for them to pay, and the things that they will, reimburse for. And it's super tough. I feel for these family practices that are insurance based, and how hard they have to work. And I feel for the patients too, because it's a volume thing. They have to get people in and out in order to be able to get those billables going. And the practice I was involved with had longer visits, so you could code for longer visits, and so it would reimburse slightly higher. But even still, you need to have a lot of patience in order to be able to keep the doors open and really thrive. And so you see these clinics all over the place that are struggling with the insurance model. So that makes sense why you're in the private pay space. So you kind of niched into cancer. You have a couple of books, A Better Way to Treat Cancer and then Breast Cancer Breakthrough. And if we go back in time, one of the things that I read was that the path you went down for cancer is actually connected to your father passing from colon cancer. So that was interesting to me, because he really didn't play much part of your life, but yet you've dedicated so much of your life to him by way of cancer. So tell me a little bit more about that.
So it's kind of like the one father figure is the solution, and the other father figure, my father, was the problem. So yeah, I didn't spend a lot of time with my dad growing up. In fact, I didn't find out about him passing until about 6 months later. So and when in private practice, I saw a lot of patients coming in, and with the limit of the tools that they had when being diagnosed with cancer. So they had, the surgery, the chemo, the radiation, and that was pretty much it at that time. And you were seeing each one moving through the same pathway, and frequently it was not a good end solution, recognizing that there was a greater need. And then with my father then passing, seeing him going through that same process and not having options, not having understanding that there are other ways to go about it, it really became my mission to understand that there are better tools out there. Obviously, at that time, I had a lot of tools available, but since then, I really kind of escalated the type of care that's available for cancer patients.
Would you say that's kind of your bread and butter of the Karlfeldt Center?
I see about 10 cancer patients a day. And somebody gave me a stat. I guess last year we had about 500 new cancer patients. So it's something that is really exploding. That's truly a pandemic, and we need to be better at finding solutions. I'm not saying that I have all the solutions. I do know that what I bring to the table, it really improves the outcome and the potential of having a good life. So with that, you see a lot of great testimonials of people only given a few months and then still living great, but we still are not able to turn everybody around.
Yeah, for sure. So let's then kind of get into your practice, more modern day. So how many patients total do you see at your clinic annually? Do you know how many you saw in 2025?
I used to see about 30 some per day. I brought it down to maybe like 20, because I do see mostly cancer, and then you need to spend a little bit more time. So, so I would say, I mean, throughout my career, it's probably a couple of 100,000 patient interactions. So, so it's been a lot of patient hours.
Yeah. How many are on your team at the Karlfeldt?
I think we're between 30 and 40 now, I'm thinking.
If they get that, it's interesting because you get to a certain stage, right, where um, it, you just lose track of some of these things. Like, is it 30? Is it 40? And you have to take on the CEO role and focus on the bigger picture stuff, which I remember in our first business, where for the first 6 months or so, I knew every member that came through the door of the business. And then one day I came walking out of the office asking if somebody, if they needed help with anything. And they were a member and they were just waiting for their session to start. And I felt so foolish. But then I realized, well, you can't always grasp all of those numbers and, all these different things while you're working with so many other big picture things. So 30 to 40 people on your team, that's a good sized team, and just a single location.
Yeah, just single location. I mean, I had for a moment, I split locations, but then I brought them together into a larger location.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you build that building?
I did not.
Okay. Yeah. It's 2 stories.
Mm-hmm.
So walk us through what's happening there. What kinds of things do you have?
Well, it's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. By region or section or wing of the building.
Yeah. So we have, it's about 17,000 square foot building. So we do have upstairs is mostly the chronic cancer, chronic health issues, people dealing with Lyme and neurological pain syndromes, so that's mostly kind of upstairs. Then down, so we have then a large IV room. I see patients up there. Our medical director sees patients. We do some evaluations with nutritional or live blood cell analysis.
Okay.
That takes place upstairs. We have a couple of Hawkets that does 10 different therapies at the same time: ozone, carbon dioxide, photobiomodulation, hypothermia, exercise with oxygen therapy, and a few more. We have something called Flowpresso that moves the lymphatic, all the toxic lymph out of the system. We have one laser bed up there. And downstairs, it's more of the aesthetics and wellness and optimization, longevity. We also do a lot of tissue regeneration there as well. So we talked about the BTL devices. We have all of them there. The ExoMind, which is a advanced form of transcranial magnetic stimulation for depression, anxiety, PTSD, but also for executives. I wanted to optimize their cognitive function. We do a lot of non-toxic aesthetics. The M-Face, that's part of the BTL devices. Also the Axion for wrinkles and hyaluronic acid production. And also we brought the M-Vital, which is a thermoguided robotic device that delivers 30 watts of a kind of a long frequency infrared, to really help with tissue regeneration. We have a 4-seater hyperbaric. We have a couple of naturopaths down there. We have also hormone and peptide and metabolic optimization there. And there we have a little IV suite as well for more wellness, where we do like NAD and different vitamin bags and ozone IVs. We also do microcurrent therapy, where also it's for brain plasticity. We also have something called theta chamber that does, what does it do? So we have the vestibular motion, that's part of it. You have the diurnal beats. You have the certain kind of lights that you're seeing. You have cerebral electrostimulation. And that also helps a lot with the neuroplasticity. So frequently what we do for somebody dealing with any kind of neurological conditions or PTSD, we stack things. It's not like we have just come and do this one thing, even though this one thing may be very good. But what we want to do is that we want to kind of build a program where they all kind of synchronize and enhance each other. Like, for instance, we had a gal that's dealing with non-healing wounds, for I don't know how many years. And so she drove down from Idaho Falls. She's in her early 80s. And so we did the M Vital, on the source, and then also put her in the hyperbaric. And so just 2 M Vital sessions and 1 hyperbaric, and, just spoke to her, her daughter, and she said that, they're finally healing. And this just took place a few days ago.
It's amazing. So I know what some of those devices and machines cost, and they're $250,000 a piece, and in that area. So you have multiple millions of dollars of equipment that you have inside of your 2-story, 17,000-foot practice, and the kinds of things that many, many clinicians, many providers would love to have, but they just can't even imagine, right? They're having a hard enough time as it is, just kind of getting by and doing things. And so you've been at this for a long time. And, as the saying goes, it takes 20 years to become an overnight success. So I'm guessing that this has been, an evolution, and you've grown into these things. And so if we kind of go back in time now with people understanding what you've managed to accomplish today, and we start looking at different milestones. First of all, who taught you how to be in business? Who did you have mentors? Did this doc that brought you up on the medical side also teach you how to be an entrepreneur? Like where did you learn these skills from?
A lot of failures and a lot of need.
A lot of failures and a lot of need.
A lot of need. You see kind of there's a need in the business, and you try to figure it out. And so I wish I had somebody to guide me or mentor me. I mean, that would have been phenomenal. The challenge becomes as you are, because I'm as trained as a naturopath. I know how to interact with the patient. The business aspect, I kind of had to figure out on my own. And so it becomes a really kind of long journey with a lot of mistakes. And so now where I'm at now, I realize I realized for a while, but now specifically the importance of, that I need to kind of learn the business model, clean things up, within my business, because what happens is that you kind of build this whole structure. And then all of a sudden you recognize that if I want to take that next step, I really need to clean up a lot in regards to operations, process, automation, how marketing, how we communicate, how we deliver, all of these things we need to clean up. So I'm just one of those that's try to figure it out as I go in a way.
Yeah, which that is the common theme amongst the practice owners that we work with, is just trying to be scrappy. And, it's desire to do something different out of the Western medicine, reactive type of approach, and doing things that are more proactive. And so they have a passion for whether, they go down the HRT peptide route or the aesthetic route or the, family medicine and doing direct primary care, but doing things different than what the big healthcare thing is. That's generally where a lot of clinicians, if they're in the healthcare system, they step out because of want to be proactive. But it's also just like trying to just figure it out, right? And then going to conferences and being amongst a lot of other clinicians who are great at the bedside manner, great at the treatment piece of it, but are also they're just trying to figure it out too. And so you get a lot of ideas that get thrown around, but nobody actually really knows what they're doing. But you are evident that you can make it. You can build a multi-million-dollar practice by being super resilient and never losing that fire for what it is that what you got into this for.
And the challenge becomes, a lot of people, they come with their gifts, and I'm a naturopathic doctor on functional medicine, specializes in, hormone replacement or, whatever it may be. The challenge is that a lot of providers, they think that just me being there, patients are just going to come, and not recognizing that seeing the patient is usually the easy part of it. But to have a patient in front of you and then all the processes around that is the challenge. That is the hard part. So, and that is something that I've just had to evolve. And at the end of the day, it's just a lot of hustle. Just got to lean in, and you just got to know. My days are usually, I was just kind of laughing to myself because yesterday, so I was driving home I was just thinking, oh, this felt like a short day. And then I was thinking, well, I mean, it's 12 hours.
Yeah. That's kind of a short day for an entrepreneur, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I felt almost like, I was going home and on vacation. It's just been a 12-hour day.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you got to have that fire and you got to have the drive and you got to do a lot of mistakes. I mean, I've hired a lot of marketing managers, office managers that just were not good. But as you do it, you learn from all your mistakes and you become wiser. And then, like you're saying, you go to conferences and then you pick each other's brains. What did you do that was good, and where did you fail? And then you try that, and maybe that is something for you, or maybe it isn't. But each step, you are then able to grow a little bit with it.
Is there like one or two mistakes that you look back and it cost you, it really cost you, whether it was, financially, personally, emotionally, but it was just like, if you could, now knowing what you know, go back and do it, is there one or two things that was like a mountain in your life that you would, you'd be willing to share, and through a way of where if somebody else is going through it or if they can avoid it?
Yeah, I don't think I've been lucky enough to not have that big of a mistake. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I did one time is being naive and being trusting and not having the checks and balances in regards to your finances becomes really, really important. So you got to have several checks and balances where you bring in maybe a friend that has good qualifications and you put them in a very powerful or central position in your business, and then don't have enough where you have other people checking each other's work or the finances. So with that, if I would not have recognized it at the time that I did, it probably would have cost me my business. I mean, I feel resilient enough that if I, let's say I lose everything and I have a room, I can start it again. And that's once you've done the process, you feel you can build it again. But that is, I think that is a very important lesson, is to, yes, it is good. You have a friend, but you got to be very cautious in regards to what takes place. So there's a lot of expenses that were being done that was not going to be done. A lot of allocations of funds in directions that shouldn't have been. And so, that was a very big lesson.
Was it malicious in nature, or was it they were just taking advantage of the relationship, weren't taking it seriously, or what did you learn there?
I may have been a little bit of both. So a person that is not observed, a lot of times they start doing things that they shouldn't. And so it's important just to have each individual just knowing that they're accountable to somebody.
Was this early on when you had a very small team, or how many people did you have at the time that you brought this person in?
We were probably, when I brought her in, we probably were a team of about 10.
Okay.
So I mean, it was
small.
still a decent, but small.
Yeah.
And then when I let this person go, we were probably almost 15, maybe 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the time frame?
So it was a number of years.
Oh, it was a number of years.
Yeah.
Okay. Was she in a CFO type of role?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So is the lesson there? It sounds like there's a couple, but tell me if there was one more than others. Is the lesson be cautious about bringing people in, friends and family, because of the relationship can make it so that it's not, maybe they don't take it seriously, or maybe it's harder to manage them, or is it, no matter who you hire, those that are unobserved are likely to maybe start going astray?
Yeah, and then the principle that whoever's not being watched, are doing things that they may not do, and it may not be malicious. It's just they become relaxed, and then all of a sudden they think that something is okay that it shouldn't be. So that is one factor, and the other factor is that when you bring in somebody that and I brought in a lot of people that I do know, and that's done a phenomenal job. The challenge becomes that you're not as apt to confront them when there's something that is going awry. And so you let things slide a little bit that shouldn't. And that then impacts the culture in your business. So other people will then see that, well, this person is doing such and such, and they are not being kind of guided as to, what direction they should go, and kind of stop that type of behavior. So then the culture may shift then in your business where that then becomes the norm. And so so that becomes a little bit of a challenge.
So tell me about your hiring. What's your hiring process look like?
So right now it's essentially whoever, if there's a lead in that department, I want them to do the interview first and see if this is a good fit. Because at the end of the day, they need to work together and see if they can jive. So and then if they pass that, then they come to me and I'll do the additional interview. So that's the way it's currently. Doesn't mean that I think I'm going to shift that to step away from me a little bit more.
And what have you instructed these leads to look for to say yes or no before passing them on?
So essentially, you want a person that that gets it, willing to do it, and have the capacity to do
The EOS model.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the EOS model.
Yeah.
And what about like core values and the mission and vision? Where does that fit within the interviewing and hiring process?
So that becomes a huge part, so that the individual will fit into the culture. And the only way to know that is if they believe in the mission. So it's kind of the get it part. If they don't get what we're doing, then they're not going to be able to communicate to our patients, and they're not going to be able to relate to their coworkers in regards to what we're doing at the center.
And what about you? When you interview them, what are some of the things that you're looking for, and what advice would you give others that have had some attrition with their people, or they've had a tough season because they hired the wrong person, or maybe a series of wrong people? What advice do you have for people there?
I'm more, when I interview, I'm more kind of relational. How do you like tennis? Do you do this? Do you do that? Just to kind of see how the person is as a whole. The skill sets, usually what you see on a resume or a CV, though you want to make sure that they're there, but you want to see how almost the energy of the individual when you're talking to them, how you're able to interact and how they present. And so that becomes a huge part when I'm interviewing them.
What about from a sales side? So as a cash pay clinic that has probably more overhead than in a month than some clinics will bring in a quarter.
Probably in a week. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have all of these devices and things that don't have small price tags to be able to get them in a package. How are you getting your team to help with the sales process and to be part of not just being a fantastic, MA or provider, receptionist, but also a mechanism for helping with the business growth?
And I have a lot to refine still. Yeah, so I wouldn't say that, the way I have it now is the way I would like it to be. And that's the thing, is as a business owner, you're always kind of seeing the frictions and where things are not moving the way that they should. So we do create then kind of a funnel process, so to say, where you bring in the leads into the business, and obviously you want to make sure that they're quality leads. I've had the benefit of just being out there doing a lot of podcasts, doing a lot of TV shows, summits, books, all of these, speaking at conferences. So I have a lot of presence. So that brings a lot of leads into the center just by itself, and having done this for almost 4 decades now. So that becomes a big part. And then you need to process those leads, and you need to make sure that they move into the right direction. And so we have then the front team that's an educator in regards to communicating to the patients, what would be the best fit and who would be the best provider, what are they looking for, and how can we solve that? And then we have then the providers in themselves to understand then what are the programs that we offer, what are the devices, what are their strengths, their weaknesses, and how to incorporate those tools. So it is a funnel process, but at the same time, we want to make sure that it is guided by understanding and knowledge, rather than just the customer coming thinking that they do this without understanding whether that is the best thing for them or not.
Do you rely on your providers to talk numbers with them when they come in for, or they start with a deep dive, or when they establish care? Kind of how it works. Do you start with a deep dive just to understand what's going on with them, labs and initial conversation and things?
So we do a lot of the investigative. You're absolutely right. So initially we do a large investigative work with labs. Obviously, there are other testing techniques that we utilize at the center, understand symptoms, history, all of that. And so with that understanding, then we have the provider then help to put together protocol. And then we make sure then the technicians and the nurses and all of that are able to execute on those protocols.
Who presents the package to the patient or the prospective patient? I'm assuming what they do is they pay for the initial workup, the initial discovery and investigative piece of it. But then it's now based on the results and what we've found. This is the package that we are essentially prescribing or recommending for you. Who does that presentation?
So it depends in which funnel they're in. So if it is a cancer funnel, then I actually become the one that says that this is what I would like you to do. And then we have a patient advocate that goes through what all of those details are, the cost of it, the practical aspect. So for somebody that is planning then to come to the center and spend $40,000, for a couple of weeks, and the patient advocate is the one that helped to communicate and schedule and make sure that everything is organized. For the aesthetic wellness, we have other advocates that are then presenting it and saying that this is what we see and this is what you need and this is what the cost would look like and this is the expected outcome.
So the providers aren't having these conversations. You have separate roles. And like look at the EOS model. So you have separate seats that they will. Do they hear from the provider, for the provider to say, here, this is what I'm comfortable with, there's no contraindications, and so this is what I'm green lighting, and then there's a different role, this advocate that then has the money conversation with them. I guess where I'm going with is I know clinics struggle with this, right? They struggle with the fact that they have various devices or machines. They're all incredibly expensive, but they have challenges with putting these packages together that are $6,000, $7,000, $10,000+ and cancer, I guess, is one thing. Because if somebody is dying from cancer, I think people are going to be more freely willing to do whatever it's going to take, especially when you have the credibility that you do and because of your success. But certainly on the aesthetic side and on some of the more quote unquote kind of elective type stuff, those are oftentimes tougher sales for a lot of clinics. And with those that have smaller teams, they rely on whoever's in front of the patient to have the conversation, and providers generally aren't great at having money conversations. And so their conversion rates aren't great. And that's a real struggle for them. And so I'm curious on what your thoughts are and how do you incentivize your team? Do they get, if they sell a certain package, do they get a certain piece or percentage or on a quarterly basis or per sale basis? How do you work all those things?
So we do offer incentives and we do have other providers like our esthetician. She will, for a person coming wanting to kind of see what we can do with wrinkles or look younger or whatever it may be, she will then do the assessment and then present a package and then sell the package and get a percentage of whatever she sells. If it's an individual that comes in, let's say with pain or they're losing muscle function or sports injury, we have another provider that will do the assessment and then go through the same process and then offer a package and then get a percentage of that package. Absolutely right. That's a huge challenge. And it's a huge challenge for myself. A lot of times when you build your practice to then have one that is offering the service and one that's selling the service, sometimes you just don't have the money to spend to have both, employ both. So then you bring in the technician or the provider and then expect them also to sell, kind of where I'm still at. And in the perfect world, what I would like is to have an individual that after the assessment, their job becomes to sell the package and have somebody sign on the dotted line. So to me, that model is better, and that's a model that I want to work towards. But it takes a little bit of evolution. So even at my size, it's still moving towards that evolution.
Yeah. And I mean, because selling is an art and a science, right? Especially when you have so many different modalities that you do inside of your practice where there's all this cross selling that can happen, with somebody's already established care, they're already a patient, but, something changes in their life or something else comes up. They're getting ready for a cruise or a wedding or whatever. And now all of a sudden these other things that before weren't necessarily, of interest to them might be. And it's having your people on your team think, oh, that you're going on a cruise with your girlfriends. Did you know about the Neo, the BTL Neo? Did you know about the Exion or right? And because we can clean up those wrinkles, we can tighten, those buns, and we can get you more bathing suit and picture ready. And it's having those on the team that are thinking about that, because then they're helping you grow. But it's an art and a science, and some are better at it than others for sure.
And we have in our center, the challenge sometimes to bring somebody in is that establishing them the knowledge of everything that we're doing. It's quite a learning curve, being able then to really have those good conversations. And with the type of clinic that I have, it's a little bit different if you have a limited amount of devices, and then you can hyper focus on them and really drive that one funnel. We're probably have about 20 different funnels that are running at the same time. And so for one individual to be at the center of all of that becomes, that's going to be hard. It's so we have then that cross promotion that's taking place, with the one funnel that for the aesthetics, one funnel for brain health, one funnel for pain, a funnel for just optimum wellness and feeling good and hormonal. And so they then interact with each other and then shift them, hey, you should talk with so-and-so about, that pain. And then they move into that funnel in addition to.
Do you treat each side of the business as their own entity? Like does the cancer side have its own P&L and aesthetics has its own P&L? Do you treat it that way, or do you have it all just under one overall balance sheet P&L?
So it is all under one. At the same time, though, we are keeping track of, this section of the business, that section of the business.
Okay.
How much is the aesthetic section doing? How much is the cancer section? And so we are keeping track. Or mental wellness, how much, what is that one doing? Which is a microcurrent, the Exomind, theta chamber, and then Evox, and and then also do IVs for brain health. And so all of that then becomes one section.
I see. Okay. How are we doing on time? What time is it? Okay, we got to start wrapping this thing up here shortly. So if you try to think back when it was just you and a few others, right? What year would that have been?
Well, I mean, essentially when I came here to Idaho, I just rented an office or rented a room in a beauty salon.
Okay.
So it was me, myself, and I. Me booking appointments, calling people, taking payments, all of that. And I felt really fancy when I, finally, I got another space and then I had somebody up front, that were then answering the phone and doing all those things. So that would have been back in, what was that? Probably 04 or 05, something like that. It's a little bit more than 20 years ago.
Okay. So if you can recall back to then, and that's really kind of where I guess I've done our consulting and our operations and strategy work with the full gamut, right? From those that are like literally just launching a website and like understanding for the first time what cost of goods are and things, all the way to, practices that have many thousands of patients doing multiple millions of dollars a year and revenue, multiple different revenue streams. And so, everything in between. And while I love the established growth, those that are on the growth stage of things, like, where your practice is at, and where some of these other, where it's like, we're no longer dealing with the elementary pieces of business. And now it's like, we want to go to, multiple states, and we want to, we want to triple or quadruple the size of what we're doing. Those are super fun, exciting, because now you've got a lot of meat on the bone to work with, right? And a lot of things that are going well. But for every one of those, for every one Karlfeldt center, there's 100 of these other clinics that are, they're just one or two people there, and they just trying to keep the doors open and they're just trying to make things happen. And so that's like where my heart goes out to because of how it's really tough for me to be able to help them too, by the way. Like when a clinic is in a really, they're in a really stressed state and they're in a place where like they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And it's just like they're working another job. Maybe they're working in the hospital while at the same time they're doing this other thing, or they just didn't prepare it correctly. That's really tough for anybody to step in and really be able to help because there's so little resources to do the things that need to get done. But they're some of the hardest working people. Like they're some of the most tenacious, resilient people out there who are willing to do anything. So I'm curious from your standpoint, like what advice or guidance would you give these other practices who are thinking, man, I would love to have, forget a 17,000. I would like to have I'd like to get out of my 700 square foot room and I'd like, 7,000 square feet would be amazing. But I need to hire people. I need to figure out how to package things differently or pricing differently. Like what advice would you give more of these earlier stage clinics?
I mean, it's essential. What I've done is that you grow to the point where it becomes uncomfortable and you have to take that next step. And you're absolutely right. It takes money to make money. And when you don't have money, then it feels, the only thing that you can rely on is your blood, sweat, and tears. And so you have to then just figure out what are some of the things that I can do to go out in the community that doesn't cost much money. So then I did different continuing education with the schools. I set up at health food stores. I did reflexology sessions in Santa Monica at a health food store to do analysis that way.
What would you do there? You set up a little table and
little table, exactly, just a little table, and then little flyers, and then people walking by, and then you communicate with them, and so you can't be afraid to communicate, and you have to learn the skill to connect with people. I think that is the most valuable tool that you have. You can't just sit behind a desk waiting for people to come to you. You have to reach out and engage and have that burning desire that what it is that you have, that it's going to make an impact in somebody else's life. And you need to really present that to the world and figure out how to do it. Right now, you have YouTube, you have podcasts, there's so many different avenues that you can go out and communicate. So you just got to keep compounding that. And then as you are then filling your schedule, then that is then building then up resources that you can then take that next step. So essentially what I've done is that each step that so even though I'm multi-million, everything that I'm making, I'm essentially bringing into the business again and just kind of letting it grow. By doing that and just kind of hitting it hard, then you are then able to grow it. And I think that is the most valuable lesson, is that you just can't wait for things to happen. You got to go out and grab it.
What are maybe a couple of things that you did that you would never do again, that you would like flag as a warning for people?
I think location is important. So yes, you may find this cute little office that is in this, it's very inexpensive, but nobody wants to go there. So like, for instance, I had my practice in Santa Monica, and then I moved it to a place, Encino, thinking in my mind that people are going to travel, from Santa Monica to Encino. In LA, that's like another country. Even though when traffic is good, it's like 15 minutes to go there. But when traffic is bad, it's obviously a whole lot more. So recognizing what your patient population are, where are they located, and make sure that you then get your office close to them. Because in the beginning, when you don't have a reputation or something that people travel to, then they are going to find whatever's convenient that's close by. So finding who your avatar is, who is your main customer, and then find a place that is close to that person.
Yeah. So you made a mistake of not having your location when it was most ideal, it sounds like, and that was a lesson learned. What about something like on the marketing or on the hiring side? Anything that you look back?
I've done so many mistakes there, so it's not even funny.
You wouldn't do again that you might say?
Probably what I've done a lot is that I've hired somebody that I knew that had the credentials, but did not have the EQ or emotional, to be able to fit into the culture of the clinic. And so I've done a number of those. So I would say really stick to your culture, create that culture strong, and then make sure that everything that you hire fits in that culture.
Yeah, that's so important. And it's such a temptation, right? When, you maybe don't have a lot of money coming in to reach out to friends or family and invite them in. But yeah, it's oftentimes a mistake, or it introduces some real challenges that could have been avoided if that culture had been set and the standards been set and everybody is hired to them. And that's if they don't fit the core values, if they don't align with the mission and the vision, like there's just no place for them. And I think a lot of clinics could really save themselves a lot of heartburn and all the troubles that come with hiring the wrong person if they hired to their core values and their culture, and looked at the credentials after that.
I mean, some of my best hires, really did not have any credentials, and they really just grew up within the organization, and they really got to know the organization, and you saw that their skill sets were something that we can utilize in a broader scale, and they nurture that evolution, and they become phenomenal employees. And so I feel it's really powerful to allow people kind of move up in the organization as they learn.
Yeah. So you promote from within. That's a big part of your culture.
That's where I would like to go first.
Yeah. You just have to be careful of that promoting outside the zone of genius thing. That's always a risk that sometimes we fall into.
And the challenge is that if you bring in somebody like a COO or CFO that comes from the outside, it's really hard. And if they don't fully understand the culture, then to have them integrated into the organization. And that's a really big challenge.
Yeah, for sure, because it's higher probability that they'll change the culture in that level. You start talking about C-suite and executive types, and the culture will almost certainly change versus them adapt into it, right? Because of the strings that they can pull and the position that they're in. And so the culture shifts. So I guess in kind of wrapping this thing up, what advice would you give to practice owners? So, okay, maybe this is not the last question, but I did want to ask you this piece of it. You have a lot of clinics out there that are going down the HRT peptide path of things. You have aesthetic practices that are starting to offer those things. You have a lot of telehealth related companies where a patient doesn't need to see a provider. They fill out a form online. They get their labs done. They can do it at home. And so without even leaving the house, and it's very lucrative, right? So I don't even know really how to frame this question correctly, because I have obviously feelings about that from the standpoint of no matter what a clinic is offering, they should be specialists in it for the sake of the patient, for the sake of the patient's safety. But there's a real temptation when you see the dollar signs. Or I mean, I saw a commercial not long ago that said, in 24 hours, you can convert your gym or, hair salon or whatever and add this, HRT component to it. Basically, I think being an affiliate of them. So you have a lot of competition that's coming online in various ways I say competition because it's in the same kind of vein, but it's certainly not by way of the expertise or the way in which things are happening, but it's confusing the market. And so what is the right question here?
Yeah, I mean, in reality, you have these individuals, and you're going to see that a lot. And you also saw, with like chiropractors, for a while you have a chiropractor in every corner. So you with that, if that is the direction you're choosing, the advice that I would have is that do something you're passionate about. Don't do it for money, because money, if you just do it for money, you're going to burn out. And also the patient's going to feel it. You're going to lose trust. They're going to feel like you're a scam. You're going to have, it's just reviews going to be bad. Your people are going to want money back. And it just becomes a mess. So if you believe in your mission and this is what you are really wanting to do, and also you set up your practice in a way that is in line with who you are and your goals in life, because at the end of the day, if somebody wants to live in Puerto Vallarta and then do telemedicine from there, then that's what they should do. And the beauty nowadays is that you have the ability to do it. And with all the automation tools that comes in, you can do a lot with much less resources, which is phenomenal. And you're absolutely right. There are a lot of shiny toys out there. You can go on Facebook and then you see, do this course and that course, and now do a doppelganger of yourself. And and there's a lot of good things alongside with that. Recognize that it takes a lot of effort and energy. It looks so simple, those little courses or that little tool or all of that looks simple. The integration of it and operating it as another story, and then also be able to communicate it to the customer base. So you can't just kind of jump into these quick sales. You have to do it with real thought, before you move in that direction and really feel that this is what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I think you definitely were picking up on like what I was trying to set up there, right? Which is if you're chasing the almighty dollar, if you're doing something not because it's what you're truly passionate about, it'll catch up to you, whether it's the reviews or it's just the problems, the complaints, lack of referrals, whatever, because that is a temptation that a clinic will start to deviate from its core focus. It'll start to venture into other areas because of a commercial or because of the algorithm, and they see something online that makes something look so simple. And the commercial said in 24 hours, I could have a hormone component to my gym or my chiropractic office or whatever, and made it seem so easy, but it's really not. Hormones is a very specialized thing, but whether it's hormones or anything else, like you're saying, stick with what you're passionate about, stick with what you're good at, and the money will follow. That's the thing, is if you do something really, really well and you become known for it, and those reviews and testimonials and everything continues to come in, that your net promoter score is going to be high enough to where you're not going to have to chase patients down, and even in a very competitive market. So that you hit on it. It's do what you're passionate about. Don't chase the almighty dollar.
I don't know if you remember the book, the score will take care of itself. It was the San Francisco, the 49ers coach that I don't know how many Super Bowls he won. I can't remember the name of the coach. Essentially what it is that if you go out on the field and you make sure that everything you do is to the best of your ability and tweak everything and optimize everything, what you cannot do is focus on the score. All you do is focus on the processes and what you deliver and go out there with your full heart, and the money will take care of itself. It will come, it will happen, the business will grow. And as long as you go out there and you prepare yourself and you do what really burns in your heart.
I think that's a great spot to end it. I think coming from a doc that's built a multi-million-dollar practice, started off in a little space, moving to a state he didn't know anybody at, 20 some odd years ago. Like that's a good final lesson for people to hear, and I think hopefully we'll pay attention to in he too, because there's so much truth to that. Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, thank you so much for taking the time out. It's a Saturday today. As entrepreneurs, what end of day looks like or what a week looks like is not standard, right? So I thank you for taking the time out of your weekend to come and have this conversation and sharing everything that you shared, all these different lessons and things. And what I'm hopeful for is that people will, these other clinicians and or those who are thinking about going through it will hear all the different tidbits of value and information that you shared. And people want your book. You've got a couple books out. Where do they find the book? Where do they get a hold of you?
Just go to Amazon and you can find a better way to treat cancer, and then also breast cancer breakthroughs. So either you can just find it there.
Okay.
For myself, I'm at thekarlfeldtcenter.com, and if they want to listen some on my podcast, one on cancer, one on Lyme, and then one on It's called the Dr. K Show, the
Okay.
third podcast that is more, it's a little bit more in health or personal development, or, talk to Nobel Prize winners in physics. And, so it's more kind of interesting conversations for the common individual that may not be dealing with Lyme or cancer. So those are good places. And obviously, if you need assistance, I'm available. You can just reach out, and we do offer free discovery calls for cancer patients and Lyme patients. So, and that way they can see if this is something that is a good fit, and we can see if the patient's a good fit for the clinic, and without it costing anything.
That's me, Karlfeldtcenter.com.
The Karlfeldtcenter.com. Yeah.
Thanks, Doc. Really appreciate you coming and being part of this. Has been amazing.
Yeah. And one final thing that I think is really important, and this is something that I realized, because we always look outward and think that everybody else is an expert, and then we have, the thinking that we don't know what we're doing and try to figure it out. Recognize that everyone else around you, they're also trying to figure it out.
Sure.
And so just kind of be confident in what you're doing, and that I think that just keep on doing, create momentum, move forward, and don't think that everybody else has a solution and you don't. Everyone else is trying to build things as well.
Yeah, be humble enough to ask questions, right? And have humility, and proximity is very powerful, right? So nobody's got everything figured out, but if you have got the right people around you, then chances are pretty good that somebody's got the solution that you need. And it may be a phone call, you may have to get your wallet out for it. But don't suffer in silence too, as I think that's an important piece of that whole thing, is that, I'd say don't put people on a pedestal, because nobody's got it all figured out. Everybody's definitely trying to navigate their own challenges and peaks and valleys through life, but surround yourself with the right people and be humble enough to admit when you don't know something, and ask questions, and be willing to invest in yourself and in your business if that's what it takes to get you through it and on the other side. Thanks again.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.